Thor: Love and Thunder is a 2022 American superhero film based on the Marvel comic books character of the same name, namely Thor. Produced by Marvel Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. It's the direct sequel to Thor Ragnarok in 2017 and the 29th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The film is directed by Taika Waititi, who co-wrote the script with Jennifer Kaytin Robinson and stars Chris Hemsworth as Thor alongside Christian Bale, Tessa Thompson, Crowe and Natalie Portman. In the film, Thor attempts to find inner peace, but must return to action and recruit Valkyrie, Thompson, Korg, Waititi, and Jane Foster, Portman, who is now the Mighty Thor, to stop Gorr the God Butcher, played by Bale, from eliminating all the gods. Hemsworth and Waititi had discussed the plans for the sequel into Ragnarok in January 2018. Love and Thunder was announced in July 2019, with Hemsworth, Waititi, and Thompson all set to return, as well as Portman, who did not appear in Ragnarok. Waititi wanted to differentiate Love and Thunder from Ragnarok, seeking to make a romance film and a 1980s-inspired adventure. He adapted elements from Jason Aaron's run on the Mighty Thor comic book, and which sees Foster take on the mantle and the powers of Thor while suffering from cancer. Robinson joined to contribute to the script in February 2020, and further casting was revealed later that included the appearance of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Production was expected to begin in late 2020, but was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Filming ultimately began in January 2021 in Sydney, Australia, and concluded at the beginning of June. Thor: Love and Thunder premiered at the El Capitan Theatre in Hollywood on June 23, 2022, and was released in the United States on July 8, 2022, as part of Phase 4 of the MCU. The film has received praise for its lightheartedness and cast performances, but was criticized for its tonal inconsistency and screenplay. The film stars Chris Hemsworth as Thor, an Avenger and the former king of Asgard, based on the Norse mythological deity of the same name. Director Taika Waititi said that Thor is going through a midlife crisis in the film, as he's trying to figure out his purpose, trying to figure out exactly who he is and why he's a hero, or whether he should be a hero. Hemsworth twins sons Sasha and Tristan portray Thor as a child. Christian Bale plays Gorr the God Butcher, a scarred galactic killer who seeks the extinction of the gods and wields a strange and terrifying sword. Waititi described Gorr as being very formidable and layered. Bale felt the character had a sort of Nosferatu-like attitude and took inspiration from the Aphex Twin music video for Come to Daddy in 1997. Waititi opted to change Gorr's facial features in the film since his original look in the comics resembles Lord Voldemort from the Harry Potter film series. Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie, the king of the new Asgard, based on the mythological being Brynhilde. Thompson and producer Kevin Feige said the character's bisexuality would be addressed in the film. Waititi said Valkyrie had to adjust to the bureaucratic aspects of ruling away from the battlefield, such as dealing with the infrastructures and economy of New Asgard and hosting delegates from other countries. Taika Waititi as Korg, the Krogan gladiator who befriends Thor. Crowe as Zeus, the king of the Olympians, based on the Greek mythological deity of the same name. And Natalie Portman as Jane Foster / Mighty Thor, an astrophysicist and Thor's ex-girlfriend who's undergoing cancer treatment while becoming the superhero, the Mighty Thor, gaining a costume and power similar to Thor due to wielding the reconstructed version of his hammer, Mjolnir. Portman, who did not appear in the previous film Thor Ragnarok in 2017, agreed to return after meeting with Waititi, who said Foster's return to Thor's life after 8 years would be a big adjustment for him, since she had had another life without him. Waititi added that Foster showed up dressed like Thor would be a real mindfuck for Thor. Now, in some ways, Thor: Love and Thunder feels like Ragnarok light, and it just doesn't capture the superb brilliance of that film, and it tries to recreate it, but without the magic that film had. Overall, though, it offers a fast-paced fun to make its worthy addition to the MCU. It was nice to have Natalie Portman back in the role, even though her chemistry with Chris Hemsworth as Thor has never really been quite believable to me. For some reason, they've just never really made me believe that they're madly in love with each other in the movies. Although, in this one, her story arc is very interesting and very sad and hard-hitting, and played a lot on my emotions. It was definitely the heart and soul of the movie, and like I said, left you feeling somewhat sad at the end of it. The best thing that's happened to the Thor series since Waititi took over was the dose of comedy that he added to this rather dull series before this. Comedy is all part of the package, and this one really does not shy away from it. Hemsworth, who really has a knack for comedic timing, really comes across as a charming, fun and interesting character, and even more heroic here as Thor. For me, you can really see that he's really enjoying playing the role. Something that really didn't come across in the first two very dull films. And Hemsworth is absolutely perfect once again. And you really couldn't imagine anybody else playing Thor at this point. He looks more like he did in the original first two Thor films, but with just a lot more downright charm. And frankly, just more likable. For me, Ragnarok was such a genuine Marvel wildflower and reinvented the Thor series. And even though this film doesn't quite live up to Ragnarok, it still sustains its freshness on the character. Although I did find it a little bit awkward with the first act of the film playing out with the Guardians of the Galaxy, I was almost hoping there would be more with them, as Thor had now joined up with them. But that was quickly done away with, and suddenly it just became all about Thor once again. Now, what more can I say about Christian Bale, one of the finest actors of his generation, who can literally reinvent himself for every role that he plays? I almost feel that it was wasted in a role like this, as he could have done so much more. I would love to have seen him as a bigger villain within the MCU, rather than just a filler baddie, as it were. Christian, though, plays this role perfectly, in what is a layered, nuanced, and multifaceted performance, bringing a depth to this baddie, unlike most MCU villains. Also, the way they portray him in the film is downright scary, and frankly there are some scenes that are just quite unnerving. But tethered to this, though, is some humility, as he brings this most human of humbled characters to life. And even though he's scary and evil, there is a sort of heart to this role that you can sympathize with him, almost resonate with his anger at times. This is by far the most interesting and sympathetic Marvel adversary since Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger in The Black Panther. The film, though, however, does feel short and kind of rushed towards the end. And I do feel it acts up somewhat of more of a filler in the MCU universe rather than a major player. And unfortunately, with most of the MCU universe films released with the major characters post-Avengers Endgame, they feel somewhat directionless, as of course everything was building up to Avengers Endgame. It was the major crescendo of the MCU film series, and since then, these characters still sort of feel lost in time. Now, I absolutely loved Russell Crowe's take on Zeus, with his poorly attempted Greek accent, done of course on purpose. He brings the gravitas as one of the best actors around at this time, and therefore is perfectly cast as the mighty god Zeus. But he plays it with a comedic flair, and Crowe is so good at adding that little bit of funny touches that it just adds another fine aspect to this movie. I love the colourful visual aspects that Waititi brings, and what more can I say about the giant goats? Their eerie screams made me laugh every time. I just love this touch. I also love the addition of Guns N' Roses soundtrack to the film. It just really is wonderful to hear these fantastic songs again. I love Waititi's zany, weird sense of humour, and for me his take on Thor has just been wonderful, even if this film doesn't quite reach the heights of Ragnarok. Thor, Love and Thunder gets an 8 out of 10.